Thank you very much, and so pleasing to see three Australian cancer companies, all with very different approaches to solving a very, very important problem. Prescient Therapeutics, we're a clinical stage company developing targeted therapies, and I'll explain what that means in a minute. So we have two drugs in development at the moment in a number of different trials, which confers several shots on goal. So we're not one of these companies with all their eggs in one basket. It's all about sort of de-risking and also giving yourself multiple sort of fulcrums for uplift. We're one of the only exposures to targeted therapies of this nature on the ASX. And we've got a team with proven drug development experience and collaborating with some fantastic clinicians worldwide. And we've recently raised over $9 million, which will fund us through to evaluating catalysts, and that was backed by some funds with particular expertise in life sciences, not just in Australia, but also in the US. Another good thing about having a deeper pipeline is that it confers several overlapping catalysts in a sector that we know is very news hungry. So, I mean, we've heard two wonderful cancer stories so far, but I thought I'd take a step back and explain to you, in order to understand a little bit more about how our drugs work, what cancer actually is. And to paint the picture, imagine if I asked you guys to go to the State Library and to hand copy out every line of every single book in that library, and then to take that copy that you've just written and copy it out again, and to take that copy and copy it again, and so on, without making any mistakes. And that's what our body does every day from the day we're born, from the day we're conceived to all the way through to the time we die. And to expect that the body would not make any mistakes is probably asking a little bit much. So cells divide over and over again. Inevitably, mistakes are made. The body's quite good at picking up some of these mistakes. Inevitably, some of them are going to lead to mistakes that are not picked up, and some of those mutations are cancerous. And so that's how cancer evolves. Cancer is it's not so much a foreign invader most of the time. It's more like homegrown terrorism, just your own body cells that have gone wrong. And so that's what we do. Some of these mutations are like aberrant switches that don't know when to switch off, or think about it like a car with a stuck accelerator pedal. And what we do with our targeted therapies, they're not indiscriminate therapies. We switch off those mutations that drive cancer, and by addressing those mutations, we kill the cancer. So think of it like with the analogy with the car with the stuck accelerator pedal. We unstick the accelerator pedal and apply the brake. And that's the best way to think about how our drugs work. A little snapshot of our pipeline. You can see that we've got 2 drugs currently in soon-to-be 4 studies. I don't have time to talk about them all today. I'm going to focus on 3 things today. I'm going to explain to you a little bit about precision medicine, personalised medicine, a little bit about our lead program at the moment, breast cancer, and our highly anticipated study soon to commence with PTX 100. Pardon me. So why is personalised medicine changing the industry? Well, this has been the way that cancer has been treated with medicine to date. It's a one-size-fits-all approach. And with an untargeted drug in an unselected population, a general population, and you'll know this from people that you would have known go through cancer therapy. Some of them will respond, some of them spectacularly well, but unfortunately that's 7 to 10% of people. Then you'll get other populations where they get no benefit, but worst still, people who get none of the benefit but exposure to all of the risks. So the worst of both worlds. And these days are coming to an end where you're given drugs indiscriminately. They're still going to be the workhorse, sadly, for a lot longer than we'd like, but their days are coming to an end. And this is what we're doing now. Through genomics and various other technologies, we're able to shine a light, turning that population into a more defined population, and we can stratify them by the type of accelerator that is being stuck on their car. And by stratifying them, we can put them onto therapies that otherwise they would not otherwise get exposed to. So think of it like it's like stacking the deck. So it's like playing a hand of poker, but all of a sudden you've got 10 more aces in the deck. That's basically what's happening with this type of approach. So not only is this great for patients, but for companies developing these drugs, once again, you are stacking the deck by going away from this and more towards this. And this is exactly what Prescient does. And we are not pretending to be pioneering this. There are many examples of this, and it is the first of it was Gleevec, and I won't go through them all, but a number of these garnishing very, a lot of attention, not just from the clinic, but also from the market, because they're producing spectacular revenue for some of these companies. And once again, we're taking the same targeted therapy approach. And unfortunately, we don't have the peer group in Australia as a smaller market, but sort of worldwide, and particularly in the US, they're commanding spectacular valuations. Why? Because they're producing quite spectacular revenues. And you know what? I was going to hesitate to put our name amongst these, but I thought, why not? We're not very good at Australia about we've got this cultural cringe, but really, I think, why not Prescient? You know, our drugs have the same pedigree as these companies. We've got one drug from Yale, the other one from the Moffitt Cancer Centre, and this is the pool that we're playing in. You know, one of our, a lot of analysts have compared us to a mini Loxo that got bought out first part of the year. Two of our guys worked on that drug. So we're certainly playing in a very big pond. Okay, so just briefly on PTX 200, addressing a particular switch called AKT. Our lead indication is in breast cancer. Normally, we're in HER2 negative, so unlike the indication that Leslie's talking about, the receptor HER2 positive, 80% of breast cancer does not have this particular receptor in abundance on it, and we're playing in that 80%, which is not only underserved, but is going to be one of the biggest growth areas in breast cancer. And the switch that we switch off is terrible news in breast cancer in particular, where not only does it is it correlated with a worse prognosis, but also confers resistance quite cruelly to existing therapies. So not only causing cancer, but preventing other therapies from working on that cancer, which is doubly cruel. So in our phase 1b study, we did an escalation and got a sneak peek at efficacy once we got to the highest dose. Normally, 25% of women, you'd expect a 25% response rate. So what does that mean? A quarter of women are expected to respond to therapy, some of them well, some of them not so well, but a quarter of women walk into the clinic with current therapies would expect to do well. So that is the benchmark. And in our sneak peek, we saw 50%. And in our phase 2 population, a subgroup of that, all of them responded. And that's a representation there. You can see a nice sweet spot forming in a particular population, which is our phase 2 population, which is locally advanced ER-positive disease. Now, big asterisks on this. These were small numbers, but you can only, you work with what you've got. We're in the middle of a phase 2 study at the moment, and if we find ourselves remotely in this ballpark, we'll be very, very excited. So this reads out, that part of the study reads out towards the end of the year. So it's all about data, and the data is starting to tell us something quite interesting. Also, we have not only just the responses themselves, but the durability of those responses. So did the cancer go away and then rebound quickly? What we've seen is that we're now getting up to 3 years where the responders on that study remain progression-free. So even the partial responders, so even the women with residual disease, the cancer had not progressed, which is great news. PTX 100. So this is the one that there's been a lot of focus on, especially from incoming investors in the previous capital raising we did a few weeks ago, which is due to start soon. And this is about taking personalised medicine to the next level. And the reason it's doing that is through this sort of basket trial approach. It doesn't care where the cancer is. So think about it like this. Your next door neighbour has little genetically in common with you, but geographically you're very, very similar. You might have something in common with your brother or sister or mother or father who live in very different postcodes. The same applies to cancer. So the way of thinking about this is we don't care where in the body the cancer is. It could be in the lung, it could be could be colorectal cancer, it could be anywhere. So long as it is genetically similar and driven by this particular switch, you bundle it onto this study called a basket study, and you get treated with a particular drug. And it makes sense, right? Because two different lung tumours might have genetically something quite different in common. They could be driven by very different things. So think about less of the postcode and more about its genetic, its drivers. And this is what we've got coming up right now. So I won't bore you with the details, but there's a particular switch called RO, another one called RAS, which was very understood. We've got the only drug in the world that switches off this particular switch called RO. It's already been in humans, so we know that it's safe. And this basket study, we're looking at 2 blood cancers and 2 solid cancers, and that's due to initiate very shortly. Now, the other exciting thing about basket trials, other than the novelty of its design, is what it enables a company to do. And a company called Loxo, which I might have mentioned before, pioneered this one trial to launch study. So forget about the traditional phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, which can take a very, very, very long time necessarily. If, depending on how your drug works, you can do this one trial to launch. And just as we're looking at RO and RAS and with our other drug AKT, these guys were looking at another type of accelerator pedal called TRK, Trek fusions, and they took that same approach. They pioneered this view. We don't care where in the body it is, if it's got a Trek fusion, we go on to the study. And so the first patient was dosed just at the end of 15, and from just 7 patients, they saw 6 responses. They raised a bit more money, and they saw that those responses were durable. And at 55 patients, this changed life for Loxo. At 55 patients, 3/4 responded. Why? They were stacking the deck. Only the people with this switch were on this study. That's what we're doing. They raised a bunch of money, and Bayer did a deal with them for worldwide rights and shared US for over $1 billion. They filed an NDA. That they got FDA approval and were bought out in January of this year for $8 billion. $8 billion for half the economics, because they've already sold it to Bayer. And if you look at this timeline, from basically 2016 to FDA approval with one trial. So that's quite staggering. And this is the same approach that we're taking with PTX 100. The first part of that journey for us is this upcoming PK/PD study. So a lot to be excited about for us. So in summary, you can see that we've got a few strings in our bow, and we're underpinned by any of the trials in PTX 200, where the data is starting to look quite interesting for us. But our moonshot's on PTX 100, which commences next month. We've got a team with a great drug development track record, including some of the guys who helped develop that Loxo drug. And we worked with some fantastic clinicians. We're not here to raise money. Our funding's in place. It's smart money, people who understand life sciences investing, and a number of catalysts. So our code is PTX. We've got both ordinary shares and options available to trade on the ASX. And I think that's us. Thank you very much.